You're not lazy. You're not broken. Your psyche is redirecting energy. Let me say that again, because if you're watching this, chances are you've blamed yourself for something that isn't your fault. You sleep enough, but you wake up tired. You're not depressed, but nothing really excites you anymore. You sit down to do the things that used to matter, work, goals, even hobbies, and it feels like the power is just gone. And the most confusing part? You want to care. You want to feel driven again. But motivation didn't disappear. It went somewhere else. Most people respond to this state by pushing harder. More coffee, more discipline, more productivity hacks. They tell themselves they're weak, lazy, ungrateful. But what if that story is wrong? What if exhaustion isn't a problem to fix, but a message you're ignoring? What if your system isn't failing, it's reorganizing? Here's the uncomfortable truth no one talks about. There are moments in life when energy stops flowing outward on purpose. Not because you're broken, but because the way you've been living, striving, performing, and surviving no longer matches who you're becoming. This is why some of the most awake, self-aware, or inwardly transformed people feel the most exhausted. Not burned out from doing too much, but worn down from outgrowing an old version of themselves. In this video, I'm going to show you the hidden psychological reason your energy feels unavailable. Why the more conscious you become, the more tired you might feel, and what to do when your energy refuses to keep feeding a life that no longer feels true. To understand this, we need to stop seeing energy as fuel and start seeing it as intelligence. And once you see that, everything changes. Your body isn't tired, your identity is. That distinction changes everything. Most people think energy works like gasoline. You use it, you run out, you refuel, and you keep going. Sleep more, drink coffee, take supplements, optimize your routine. But if that model were true, you wouldn't feel this kind of exhaustion. You'd feel physically drained, not existentially empty. Because the kind of energy you're losing right now isn't muscular. It's directional. Carl Jung described energy not as a substance, but as a flow of psychic attention. Where your attention goes, your life force follows. For years, your energy flowed outward, toward goals, roles, ambition, approval, survival, toward becoming someone. But something shifted. When old life goals collapse or quietly stop feeling meaningful, your psyche pulls that energy back, not as punishment, as protection. Because continuing to invest energy in a map that no longer reflects who you are would slowly destroy you. This is why so many people feel exhausted after success. The corporate achiever who climbed the ladder only to wake up empty. The person who has everything, career, partner, stability, but feels strangely numb. Or the one who recently went through an awakening, a loss, or a deep inner shift, and suddenly can't access the drive they used to rely on. Nothing is wrong with them. Their identity has outgrown its container. The mistake most people make at this stage is trying to push through. More caffeine, more discipline, more productivity hacks. They force themselves to perform using an energy source that no longer exists, and when that doesn't work, they turn the blame inward. I'm lazy, I've lost my edge, I should be grateful. But guilt doesn't create energy. It only drains what little remains. Here's the reframe that changes everything. Your system is conserving power because the old map no longer works. You're not tired because you've failed. You're tired because your psyche refuses to keep funding a life that no longer aligns. This inward turn of energy can feel terrifying. When you're used to defining yourself by output, achievement, or momentum, the sudden absence of drive feels like death. But it isn't death. It's a withdrawal, a pause, a regrouping. A small lesson to hold on to here. Don't ask, how do I get my energy back? Ask, what version of me was my energy feeding, and is that version still alive? Because the timing matters. This doesn't happen randomly. So why now? Why does this collapse often come after growth, insight, or success? That's where the next layer begins. Every evolution begins with fatigue. That's not a motivational quote. It's a psychological law. Carl Jung spoke about something called the death of the persona. The persona is the version of you that learned how to function in the world. The achiever, the good child, the strong one, the hustler, the agreeable partner. the identity that earned approval, security, and belonging. For a long time, your energy fed that persona. It powered ambition, it chased validation, it sustained roles, and it worked. Until it didn't. When you outgrow an old self, the persona doesn't politely step aside. It collapses. And when it does, the energy that once fueled it doesn't instantly find a new home. It goes quiet, directionless, dormant. That's the part no one prepares you for. Think of a snake shedding its skin. The old skin comes off before the new one hardens. For a moment, the snake is exposed, slow, vulnerable. Or think of your phone updating its operating system. During the update, everything lags. Apps freeze. Nothing works the way it used to. Not because the system is broken. This is why the fatigue feels so strange. You're grieving something that hasn't technically died. You didn't lose a job. You didn't lose a person. You lost a way of being, a self that once gave your life structure and meaning. So you notice subtle shifts. You don't want to hustle anymore, not because you're lazy, but because it feels hollow. You don't feel like socializing, not because you're antisocial, but because small talk drains you. You stop reacting to drama, not because you're numb, but because it no longer hooks you. And this is where many people panic. They try to resurrect the old life just to feel energy again. They go back to old habits, old relationships, old ambitions. Or they chase stimulation, dating, spending, scrolling, dopamine hits, just to feel something. But borrowed energy never lasts. Here's the line to remember. Fatigue is what happens when meaning collapses faster than it can be rebuilt. Your system isn't empty. It's between stories. A small lesson here. Don't rush to refill the space. Let the emptiness speak. Because when meaning dissolves, it reveals something deeper than identity. And most people never stay still long enough to notice it. But that deeper layer, that's where this exhaustion really comes from. And that's what we need to look at next. You're not tired because you're weak. You're tired because you're finally safe. For a long time, your nervous system didn't run on inspiration. It ran on fear, urgency, hypervigilance. The constant sense that something bad would happen if you slowed down. That pressure, deadlines, expectations, trauma, instability kept you moving. And it worked. Survival mode is incredibly energizing. It sharpens focus. It fuels endurance. It gives you adrenaline, cortisol, and momentum. But it's not sustainable. It's borrowed energy. And borrowed energy always demands repayment. Here's what most people don't understand. When the threat finally disappears, the body doesn't celebrate, it collapses. This is called delayed exhaustion. The crash that happens not during danger, but after safety arrives. Your system finally lowers its guard, and all the fatigue you couldn't afford to feel before rushes in at once. You see this everywhere. Someone leaves a toxic relationship, and instead of feeling relief, they feel empty and exhausted. Someone escapes poverty or chronic instability, and suddenly their body shuts down. Someone deconstructs a belief system that once gave them certainty, and now they feel disoriented and tired all the time. Nothing is wrong with them. Their nervous system is recalibrating. Think of a soldier returning from war. They don't relax the moment they get home. The body takes time to learn that it's safe again. Or think about how burnout often hits after a vacation, not before. Or why people sometimes cry after achieving a long-sought goal. The release comes after the pressure is gone. But here's where people get confused. They compare this version of themselves to the old one, the hyper-driven, always-on, adrenaline-powered self, and conclude they're declining, that they've lost something essential, that they should be able to bounce back faster. But the old energy was never peace. It was tension. Here's the reframe that matters. Rest is not regression. It's recalibration. Your nervous system is learning a new rhythm, one that isn't built on threat. And that takes time. You can't force your body to trust safety. You have to let it experience it. A small lesson to carry forward. If your body slows down when life becomes safer, listen. That slowdown is intelligence, not failure. But even this doesn't explain why the exhaustion feels so deep, so existential, like it's touching something beyond the body. Because there's still one more layer, one most people never see. And that's where we're going next. What if your exhaustion isn't yours? What if the tiredness you're feeling doesn't come from doing too much, but from carrying what was never meant to be carried in the first place? From a Jungian perspective, a massive amount of psychic energy is spent on maintenance. Maintaining an image, a role, a version of yourself that keeps the world comfortable. For years, your energy may have been used to please others, to stay acceptable, to live up to expectations you didn't consciously choose. This kind of energy drain doesn't look dramatic. It looks normal, responsible, praised, being the good child who never causes trouble, being the strong one who never needs help, being the successful one who holds everything together. But every mask costs energy. Jung believed that whatever parts of ourselves we suppress don't disappear. They go into the shadow. And here's the part most people miss. The shadow doesn't just hold pain or darkness. It also holds reclaimed energy. Life force that was split off in order to survive, belong, or be loved. When you stop performing, when you stop playing a role that no longer fits, that energy doesn't immediately feel empowering. At first, the system collapses, because the structure that kept everything running has been removed. That's why rest can feel so uncomfortable, even frightening. Try this for a moment. Ask yourself, honestly, who would I disappoint if I fully rested? Your parents? Your partner? Your coworkers? Your past self? That question alone reveals how much of your energy was never yours to begin with. One of the most common mistakes people make at this stage is feeling guilty for resting. They equate stillness with failure. They measure worth by productivity. If they're not producing, improving, or proving something, they feel uneasy, as if they're breaking an unspoken contract. But here's the truth. Exhaustion often appears when authenticity finally begins. When you stop living from borrowed expectations, your system needs time to reorient. You're no longer spending energy on masks, but you haven't yet learned how to live from your own center. A small lesson to take with you. Notice where your energy leaks when you say yes out of obligation. Notice how your body responds when you don't perform. That awareness is not selfish. It's the beginning of self-possession. So if your energy no longer wants to perform, no longer wants to prove, no longer wants to be impressive, that's not a problem to solve. It's a transition to honor. And that brings us to the most important question of all. So what do you do when energy doesn't want to perform anymore? Energy doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to permission. This is where many people get stuck. After realizing their exhaustion has meaning, they immediately ask the wrong question. How do I get my energy back? As if energy were something lost, stolen, or broken. A more honest question is this: what drains truth from me? Because energy doesn't return by being chased. It returns when it no longer has to protect you from a life that feels false. So instead of forcing motivation, here are 4 ways to create the conditions where energy can return on its own. The first is sacred boredom. This means moments with no stimulation, no phone, no podcast, no productivity, just space. At first, this feels uncomfortable, almost agitating, but boredom is where suppressed signals surface. It's where your nervous system finally speaks without interruption. The second is low-output creativity. Do something that creates without producing. Write without publishing. Paint without sharing. Move without tracking. The moment creativity becomes monetized or optimized, it turns into performance again. Energy flows where there's play, not pressure. The third is learning to read body-based signals. Your body knows before your mind does. Tension usually means no. Expansion often means yes. This isn't about overthinking, it's about noticing. If your body tightens around a commitment, listen. Energy leaks where truth is ignored. The fourth is choosing meaning before motivation. Motivation is unreliable during transitions. Meaning is quieter but deeper. Ask yourself, does this feel honest? If the answer is yes, energy will follow in time. If the answer is no, forcing motivation will only deepen the exhaustion. There are 2 warnings worth taking seriously here. Don't turn healing into another project to manage. And don't try to optimize rest. The moment rest becomes a strategy, it stops being rest. Here's the reframe that ties everything together. Energy returns when life feels honest again. Not immediately, not dramatically, but steadily. when you stop feeding roles that no longer fit, when you let your nervous system trust safety, when you reclaim energy that was never yours to give away. And if you're in this phase right now, know this: nothing is wrong with you. You're not failing. You're reorganizing at a deeper level than most people ever allow themselves to reach. Which leaves one final question. What happens if you stop fighting this exhaustion and start listening to it instead? Maybe exhaustion isn't asking you to rest more. Maybe it's asking you to live differently. Not every state of tiredness needs to be fixed. Not every low point is a problem. Some forms of exhaustion arrive not to be eliminated, but to interrupt a life that no longer fits. We've been taught to treat fatigue as failure, to see slowing down as weakness, to believe that if something isn't working, we must push harder or repair ourselves. But sometimes, what looks like malfunction is actually truth breaking through. Not everyone who feels exhausted is broken. Some people are simply done pretending, done performing versions of themselves that no longer feel real, done chasing energy through achievement, approval, or distraction, done spending life force on roles that once kept them safe, but now keep them small. If your energy disappeared, ask yourself this: not to judge, but to understand. What version of you did it stop feeding? The overachiever? The caretaker? The one who never rests, never asks, never stops? Exhaustion often arrives when honesty begins, when the body and psyche quietly agree, we can't live this way anymore. And if you're in that space right now, confused, tired, unsure of who you're becoming, know this: you're not behind, you're not failing, you're not alone. You're standing in the pause between who you were and who you're becoming. There's no rush to fill that space, no need to force clarity or motivation. Meaning has its own rhythm, energy returns in its own time, when life begins to feel truthful again. So for now, listen. Let the quiet teach you. Let the tiredness speak. And if this spoke to you, if something here resonated deeper than words, you're not alone here. Stay with that.